Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is AC Moon, founder of Indica Innovations International. Thank you very much for joining me today, AC.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's so good to be here. It's been a crazy 420, so it's always good to connect with people after a super stony weekend.
Coming out of the fog.
Yeah, that's for sure. It might take a couple of days out here. Humboldt's rowdy.
Well, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. AC, I always like to start with a little bit of background, and with, more than 25 years of experience in cannabis, where did you get your start?
I think that I started as an advocate. My father was a veteran from Vietnam. My mother had cancer, and I was working as a second generation farmer. Of course, you grow up trimming, doing everything else. When you're from the Humboldt region, you just kind of know what to do. So I started fighting for all the laws for, AIDS patients, cancer patients. I started my first edibles company in 2001 in the Bay Area. So started cultivating big from there and got my degree in environmental horticulture and then botany, and became certified and started several different dispensaries and kept on going from there.
So a lot of people that have experience in that legacy market sometimes, learn with work experience rather than jumping to the university side to get more of a formal education. What prompted you to go the university route?
I definitely felt like I saw the future, and the future is excelling our information so that we can better ourselves. I went later into intellectual property management, genetics, and have now, gone around the world from CGMP to ISO and really trying to gain as much information as possible, because I feel like that's power. And the only way that we can truly level out this playing field is to introduce true business and true practices into what has always been kind of like the game, where we're all just hustling and growing and doing what you got to do to get forward. So definitely evolving your education is always going to better your career. And I think all sectors of the world, right?
Oh, completely agree. I mean, from an information sharing standpoint, how does the cannabis industry stack up when it comes to, comparing it to other mature industries?
Oh, that's a really great question. Actually, that was an eloquently worded question. I think that it's different for different sectors of it. I think traditionally we've always been kind of private and a little bit secret about our processes. We always have our magic little formula. And so I think it's taken people a lot of time to set aside their egos to understand that the true freedom of the plant and the freedom of the movement is in being able to share the information, the practices, the genetics, and able to integrate that consciously into a worldwide platform. Everybody tends to think very small, like this is my little county or this is my little state, when really this is a world aspect. So now that we're seeing a lot of pay to play platforms for education, that's becoming yet another industry on top of it. So you kind of have a separation of the legacy that's willing to be a communal aspect and share information, and then the other people that want to capitalize on it. So you definitely see a divide in society on which role people play.
Can you change cannabis on a global level right now, or is it more of the grassroots efforts that are going to make that change happen?
Oh, that's a very deep question, sir. I believe, how do you speak this in public? I was actually just speaking to Graham about this and Tim Blake the other day. Is the world is an oligarchy. We all know that. Oligarchies are set up because they can lobby movements through their money and their funding. That's why we have privatized prison systems that's created criminal revenue, that it provides minimum wage workers to large corporations that pay to have it illegalized. The lobbying circle that creates the criminal revenue on a global scale is real. And so as we identify the reality of what is, paid revenue from criminalization acts and the amount of what is medical and the standards of what medical will be they've bastardized everything from opium poppies to, a trillion other plants, including willow trees for ibuprofen or birch or meadowsweet. And so plants, the whole world is built on capitalizing off of plants. And so I think that it's possible for us to believe that we've integrated it and work within it, and actually lobby towards that by creating alliances and groups that understand each endemic platform and location's laws and political review. But on a global scale, I think it will take a long time because they're looking for where they can implicate the international standards for import and export. And when that's ran by, an illicit mob style, concept, for me, like, I'm trying to figure out how to speak the truth without speaking too much of the truth, is we know how dirty the real game is. So yes, we have the ability to create great change on the grassroots side, especially with our ability to use social media and things like this, where podcasts and other things bring very large audiences and minds together. But only if we can gain enough equity through that social movement to apply the pressure to the powers that be that actually are lobbying for the laws. And that's where I believe it's very difficult, is the grassroots is upset with corporate, but we need corporate in order to lobby for the correct laws that protect everybody in in a worldwide platform. So it's very difficult.
No, I understand. I mean, we're all living that difficulty. With 25 years of experience in the industry, more than 25 years experience in the industry, I mean, are you happy with the current state of cannabis?
Oh, is anybody, sir? I think there is no sector that is able to really say that they're very happy. I came back out from where I've been living on the island of St. Croix. I had to have some surgery, but I also came out here to help at Area 101, where we gathered all the farmers locally in the Emerald Triangle to really identify what the problems were. How can we ambassador this more expansive, work that we're doing? Because the point is to be able to take the grassroots and legacy information that we've gained through, decades of experience and prohibition going to recrealization or adult use and implement it into other countries and spaces. But if we can't have like a level playing field, even in California or Colorado and any of these jurisdictions, how can we be, a template for other places? We're still in distension here. So I'm not happy about the way that oligarchy, as I said, often takes over through lobbying for movements. And being somebody that has been a farmer in both the illicit, recreational, and medical market for over 25 years, and a second generation farmer that worked through illicit, of course, I didn't apply for adult use to be legalized because I knew that the movement would be overthrowing us, because we fight for legalization. But when you're in the woods and just growing a whole bunch of ganja, like, you don't really know what that means. What that means is taxation, persecution of the same cycle as every other commerce in the world. And there is no medical freedom within that when you look at the true brass tacks of laws. And so I believe in the medical freedom of plants, and that Bayer shouldn't be able to sell ibuprofen when people are being taken away the information that ibuprofen is synthesized from a willow tree. That willow tree could be in their front yard, but how many ibuprofen pills have they taken? And that's just providing those biopharmaceutical companies, who are owned by the oil companies, who are the same oligarchies that have built our entire planet. Those are the narcissistic authoritarianisms that I believe rule the world. So cannabis is just a catalyst, I think, that could be used as change if we're aware of how to evolve it in a conscious manner, for sure.
What are those top line problems that you were discussing in the Emerald Triangle?
Well, taxation, lack of distribution. A lot of the farmers that go in or have bought into the green rush industry from the East Coast or even abroad, where I've worked with Ukrainians and others, Hmong societies I've sold a couple of properties to, that have bought into the Society of the Emerald Triangle in Northern California, believing that they're going to get rich quick off of cannabis. But really, a lot of people didn't understand that when state laws came into play, cannabis didn't get popularized in California because we were selling to the people down the street. The hustle that has been gained and the power that we've gained both in Hollywood and Northern California cannabis is because we've hustled it everywhere else. That everybody's pushing it to the East Coast, they're pushing it all over the place. We're arguing with beasters out of Canada and all the BC bud all the way down to Mexicali. We had enough of the movement from the hippie era that provided the freedom fighters the platforms to create that. But I really don't think that we're able to fully understand that commerce came from out of California. There is so much cannabis in the state, just as with Colorado is popular with the indoor, that you come in, there's not any distribution. There's no way to get it to the customers because the only customers that are in a high enough profile or money availability with reliable funds is in Southern California. So the transportation issues, the distribution license, taxation of $9 per ounce all the way up, all the way to the farming illicit rights. And Northern California is also extremely high terrain. We have a lot of EPA acts that are protecting my lower Humboldt property can't actually be grown on. I have to grow on the Trinity and Nevada County property because, the eel shed watershed where we are protecting salmon. We have a lot of wildlife that also has a problem building the infrastructure because it's, highly wooded terrain. And so that's how we've kept from the choppers, though. Tall trees keep the choppers away. So we got away with it for a little bit longer. But true agriculture definitely belongs where it's a little bit flatter, open sun. So craft cultivators will always argue with the shadows of, both the government and the trees, literally.
So when getting a little bit back into your background, when you graduated with the horticultural degree, what did you do right out of college?
I am a cannabis farmer and I owned a dispensary. I did work in the forestry department because my mother was a forester as well as a firefighter. So I was able to, grab a little bit of hold of that. But I really gained a lot of hustle through entrepreneurialism in San Francisco. I was a street kid, I came from hustling on the streets. And so as somebody that was really young, I was basically going to college out of my car at certain points in time, hustling at every point, bringing all the goods from the woods down to the hood, which was the Bay Area, Oakland, and where we built Oaksterdam and other, different entities that now still hold traction in the legacy market. So I think that it took probably 6 years to get the first raids in. I started the first company in 2001. We were already raided by 2005. And then again got raided 2007. The federal government came in and raided my home in 2009. And again, the FBI and federal government raided me again in 2012 and 2013. And so during that time, I became an inventor and got my patent. And so I went from federally rated to federally patented in 3 years. You can't help but love those types of little paradigms in our industry.
Well, I mean, understood. Like with all of that happening, how were you able to persevere and stay in the cannabis industry when it was, causing you so much stress?
Passion and dedication. I believe in the freedom of the people, and cannabis for me, as well as the hemp industry for a long time, has been a catalyst of innovation of humanity. Like it's not just been about the lower players. That's why I integrate with, Glasshouse and other friends that I've gained is a respect for what they symbolize on the larger level of agriculture, how we can influence the entire world instead of thinking so tiny. Like I said, everybody thinks so tiny, but this world needs, this influence and a dedication to education so that when we learn, we can translate and digest and bridge those gaps. Because a lot of people don't understand that, we're quite entitled as white people here in America. This whole world is fighting for even the freedom to do anything without being put to a death sentence. There's several countries where, even smoking a joint still poses a threat for death. So raising a kid in a farm off grid was the freest way that I could find to spend my time. And helping the patients during the medical years was a very passionate thing for me. After my mom and family passed away from many different things, when I had different friends from addiction, of every form of alcohol, I realized that this could be a catalyst for great change for humanity if we stay dedicated. So that's where I've remained and continued innovating in my passions. So,
Do you still face persecution from those previous raids?
In ways, I hesitate to say too much on a public platform, but I think that we are all continued to be watched. Even a couple of years ago, one of the magazines that I write for, which is Grow Magazine, was federally rated and also indicted for hot hemp, which was an illegal hemp crop that genetics tested out a simple 2% hot. And when the feds came in, of course, they grabbed the computer, and which has all the files from Ed Rosenthal and myself and many other influential writers. They were able to take those data banks. So I believe that the raids still follow us in a way. They're definitely gleaning a lot of information from us online, in IG and other platforms. So the persecution I face now is where you are seen as a white person coming into the cannabis industry in other countries, working in an international platform. And a lot of the white people come in to bastardize and take over other countries, so having to calm those nerves of the international bodies and saying, there is some good white people still out here that believe in the movement, believe in plant freedom, and want to help the people. And here at home, the persecution is always like, did you pay your taxes? No. All right. Are you in compliance? Yeah. All right. And you never know if the feds are going to ignore the Cole memo one day and just come back in, because we all handed our addresses, our Google images, our DNA literally to them. And as a federal raid victim, you never know when that's going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Well, as an entrepreneur, who has had success with dispensaries, edibles, and several different parts of the industry, including as an inventor, is there one in particular that is your favorite or that you would prefer?
I love innovation of all aspects. And so anything that is innovative. So I really I've been keeping a genetic alive for about 21 years. I work with the GOO. So I also got into genetic intellectual property management in order to gain, breeding rights and plant patents and things that would help people protect their property so that they would be able to learn to license out to the larger entities that were governing commerce, in the future. So any of the spaces that I feel are innovative, and almost all of them are. We can innovate products, we can innovate edibles, new genetics. Yesterday, I spent 8 hours just playing in thousands and thousands of plants, hunting, and that's propagation is also very stimulating to me. I love it. But anything to do with the earth and trying to help people understand that organic practices are not just about cannabis and good smoke, but also about, saving the world and creating regenerative farming platforms, and the largest corporate entities can have a huge impact on our environment and our ecology. And when it comes down to it, we got one planet, and that's really what it's all about. If we got to use cannabis as the catalyst to save it, let's do it.
I'm happy to hear you talk about IP management, being as a patent holder, just because I've often heard that a lot of professionals in the cannabis industry don't use IP as a tool to protect themselves because they still have this understanding that it's a plant and owned by everyone. And so as a result, they kind of leave themselves a little bit vulnerable.
That is one of the reasons that I founded Indica Innovations International. It was because taking the collective information and understanding what is patents, what was the patent office, what is the USPTO now, and what does that all symbolize? A lot of people don't understand that their ideas, their concepts our intellectual property. We own our thoughts. And if you go through the process of being able to protect it, yeah, you do have a leg to stand on. Knowledge is power. Excuse me, I just hiccups randomly.
No worries. No worries.
And sorry about that. And I believe that intellectual property management and learning licensing is actually one of those things that we need to transcribe or translate to the cannabis industry as an imperative form. I was working down in St. Vincent and the Grenadines from 2018 to 2021, and our project was actually helping the Prime Minister understand the patent laws and how the Canadian corporations would come in to take over their legacy genetics. And without those farmers that are out in huts in the jungle having a leg to stand on, not really understanding. But myself also understanding that patents are only as good as your marketing. Patents could be as useful as a piece of toilet paper if you do not have value. They only protect something that is desired or wanted in the court of law. So a lot of people use intellectual property as a holding point of value, but it only will have a holding point if it is valued by public endorsement. So that again goes into marketing or application. And so it gets complex. So intellectual property and genetic preservation also is a difficult one because you can negate it by just going 2 cultivars back in the genetic strain and remaking it by crossbreeding it with 2 other genetics and back crossing it. So there's always there's always ways to get around everything, but it does help to build your intellectual property portfolio. It helps, to have a logo that's trademarked, to have process management that's trademarked, your SOPs are properly certified. Those create this little box program that you're able to hand to a larger entity and have that value seen in a way that is documentable and a risk management and assurance for investors and other people. And so I just think bridging that gap for the legacy people is probably difficult because, like you said, we all kind of want to have that hippie heart of like, oh, come on, let's just smoke and joint and we're going to talk about world peace and smoke weed together and ganja kumbaya. But it's not kumbaya. It's now commerce. And we have to get a little bit more due diligence on actual proper business processes. Absolutely.
Is is there a part of the world, in your opinion, that is sort of the hotbed of cannabis innovation right now?
It's always been America. But I think that in different factors, Israel has always been a leader of the scientific research, as well as outside of Amsterdam and now Munich, Germany, which is the founding place of Monsanto and Bayer's Pharmaceutical. So obviously, we know that those pharmaceutical companies are taking the time to innovate their cannabis research. And so in that way, I think that Israel is probably heading the innovative space of information, while extractions may be headlined definitely in the United States. Edibles definitely are being headlined in the United States. But I think genetic diversity is definitely still stemming from Asian, descent. We're still dealing with a lot of the Middle Eastern landrace strains that are able to reproliferate stability in our genetic pools right now. So they have a genetic innovation space. So I think that every country definitely has a different way of looking at it. But Jamaica is innovating their brand management better than anybody. So everybody's got a different innovative space. If we all work together, I think it'll be really good.
Talking about extraction, do you have a preferred method of extraction?
Ooh, I'm a rosin girl. I definitely like being able to go to the plant and just have the finest, most purest essences. Like, oh, it just tastes so good and feels so good to the soul to have organic, just organic rosin.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am a fan of some good, organic extracts such as dry sift or cold water. I have some cold water that I've preserved for over 19 years. And so the curing of each of the extracts is quite different. And so I've been playing for over 15 years on the curing aspect techniques. You see some historical findings where you see hash that are 2,000 years old, things like that. And the cannabinoid profile definitely changes with each one. But I think the terpenes are preserved the best from fresh frozen rosin or live plant rosin for sure.
Given the nature of us being cannabis equipment news, when you're working in edibles, when you are working in other aspects of the industry, sort of what's your take on equipment that is designed specifically for the cannabis industry? Is there enough of it out there, or is it still kind of at the early stages of development?
I actually have worked as a consultant and hands-on with many different manufacturing companies where we're innovating new machinery, such as back in the day, we were innovating lollipop machines that could take the tackiness of, cannabis constitutes added to the elemental process. But as we go into creating manufacturing machinery, and excuse me while my eyes dart around, I had some people asking questions there. As we get into the innovation of the machinery, we go from the Columbine section of where we have this giant machinery that has obviously been used in other industries till now, where as I'm working with the USPTO office and other patent or intellectual properties, one of the problems that we're finding right now is a lot of people have had to patent or cover intellectual property that is scheduled underneath a different schedule. Obviously, because of federal scheduling, we weren't able to walk in. And even with crop tops greenhouses, my patent, I had to sign a document that said this is not cannabis, related. And so even though I had the first trademark image federally, that is the cannabis leaf, we again have to sign a contract that says that we are not actually using it to illicitly traffic cannabis in any way. This is the ancillary. So you work into the USPTO office, they don't know how to look over or patent exam a product that is for cannabis. And those innovations are often still used, such as, a keef machine or a dry sift tumbler. That is going to be, patented or intellectually covered by something that would be like a lavender tumbler or a tobacco separation machine. So one of the problems that we've had in the machinery industry innovating that space is going back and realizing that we can't just patent search or get into the intellectual property because everything has had to use everything else in order to get that coverage as a segue to gaining traction in cannabis. So it's a tobacco pipe, it's a water tobacco pipe. You're like, no, that's definitely a weed bomb, but we have to label it different things. So when we're getting to that manufacturing and machinery space, even with HVAC or Willow Industries with their remediation system, your irradiation system, it's only now that we're able to apply it to hemp in order to segue towards the high THC cannabis district. And so now if we're allowed to get intellectual property since 2018 in the hemp industry, that will then, translate over. So there's anything you can think of. I have worked with so many different machines going off. And I love that part of the industry, actually. Machinery is amazing. But it's really, again, without ranting, having difficulty because our international trade system and the downfall of, working the manufacturing system out of Asia, which has really brought our manufacturing and machinery costs down. So now bringing the Peets and parts and, big steel machines over, we do have access to that, but it's less proliferated because of the high cost of having American-born equipment.
Can you tell us more about your specific product with Crop House Greenhouses?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I can share on this platform, but you're welcome to look at it. Crop House Greenhouses. I started as a legacy farmer back in the day when I had to have 100-foot greenhouses all, depoted out. We've been doing light deprivation since about 1999, and there's always plants outside of the greenhouse that were uncovered. So the storms come at 4,000 foot elevation. The storms start coming, or we have extreme chilling hours that didn't allow us to keep up with that. So I invented an instant pop-up portable greenhouse That's a parabolic shape, looks like a patio umbrella with a skirt, but it's made out of 8.9 mil polywoven plastics. That's very strong, that I've used in those 100-foot greenhouses for over 20 years of research. One piece of plastic lasts that long, you got to innovate it with it. It's definitely good. So people now use it as, it starts at ground level with a parabolic dome, and the telescoping pole goes up and protects up to a 14-foot tall plant. It was designed to be used originally over a 200-gallon smart pot or a fabric pot that is caged and protects all of the buds from getting rained on. So you have a brighter color, because when water is on your flowers, it degrades the quality and erodes the trichomes, and also allows molds and other things. So also is used as a pest management area, where people will cover their pest house storia in greenhouses, indoor, other places, to make sure that pest management is controlled, or sterilization quarantine before they add their plants into the grow area or sector. It's also used as a cloning and research area to do genetic and plant breeding, to be able to better quantify the pollen into a area that is identifiable, and used as research and lots of other things. I've seen people out in the woods use it as a camping like shower tent. These hippies will do everything, but yeah, there's lots of different ways to use it, but it's definitely intended as the most portable form of greenhouse that you could possibly have. And I continue innovating, looking for further partnerships, and I'll have depot top out next year, which is the same concept with a panda tarping, so that when people with 6 plants have control of being able to put any of those plants into bud, and also doing the research on plant genetics to be able to identify pheno hunting by forcing flower at will in any location throughout the world.
What was the product development process like in terms of bringing that product to market? I mean, did it start traditionally? Did it start with like a napkin sketch and then work through manufacturing, or how'd you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I was in the, we were running around. I had about 9 crew leaders out in the greenhouse. We're like, oh, storm's coming, tighten down all the skins on the greenhouses, getting all going. And I'm running around, and I had a couple of plants that tipped over in 1-gallon pots. I was like, dang it, get some bamboo. Oh no, we're out of bamboo. We're like an hour and a half out in this giant, cannabis garden out in NorCal. You can't just drive out. So we're like using sticks and like anything we can to hold these plants up, because they're getting beat by the wind and the rain. And I saw an old car that had one of those old telescoping antennas.
Oh, yeah.
And I stuck it in the plants, and I looked for more. And every time the plant grew, I was able to telescope an aspect of the antenna up. And so the antenna protected the plant up to 2 feet tall. At that point in time, I was also using a little clear umbrella to protect myself while I ran around in the greenhouses. And so I looked at it and was like, my plants need this little umbrella that I'm carrying around.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, let me do this. Because after a while of, back in the day, the tarps and anything you can to protect your ganja from getting mud butted and broken branches and tied, it just made sense. So it definitely came out of necessity.
Well, that's truly exciting. How do you think rescheduling will have an impact on the industry?
Ooh, this one's deep one, Sir David. I have definitely had this conversation a few times, even with my co-workers at Oaksterdam University, and I have very opposing points of view on this. But due to working in international waters, I've done a lot of due diligence on I had the opportunity to sell my product out to. I of course want to sell my patent, as many innovators do. I want to be able to proliferate it to a higher distribution places. And when you're looking at things that you've invented, or different machinery or manufacturing, and where you can place it, you're looking at the biggest companies in the world. So Monsanto, who bought out Scott's, who has done all the playing that we all know about genetic modification, is, owned by Bayer Pharmaceuticals. And this entire thing that we've experienced in world governance is literally because of, during World War, cannabis products, hemp products, specifically hemp products, because high THC was not, a cultivar at that point in time. We have done that through selective breeding since the 60s. It was patented as a commodity of war. And so originally, when we're looking at the entire thing on why was it originally illegalized, we can go back into prohibition of the moonshine era in the 1930s. Only 3/4 of the states have to agree on a law for federal law to be changed. But yet somehow we've never been able to reach that point in cannabis. And all of a sudden they're deciding to make us medical. So I'd like everybody that is listening to this to remember what medical means. Medical is a standard that nobody in a kitchen or at a greenhouse or a farm can hit. CGMP standards are stainless steel standards that are very high investment in many different places that I work in order to try to create medical grade CGMP facilities. Like I said about the willow tree and the ibuprofen, why is that tree not medical, but that pill is? It's because that taxation allows them to govern laws. So when originally during the treaties during World War II, a lot of people don't realize that Japan, all over Asia, I moved to Asia during learning my engineering and manufacturing for my personal product. And while living in Asia, I learned about the illicit industry there and why the American government has been the standpoint of world justification of cannabis legalization and prohibition. And so going into that, you have to realize it's about commodities. It's the fact that the gas guys created, neoprene, nylon, all of the things that are clothing, all the things that are paint, all the things that are pills, all the things that are made. The only reason that they have power in this world is that no other plants were allowed to constitute that. Fertilizer companies are using the degraded biomass or the leftover bio waste in order to shove it into fertilizers so that they can sell it back to commerce. These are the same companies, the same oligarchies run all of it. And the reason that the other countries had such a hardcore death penalty in this fear of anybody is because under fear of breaking world treaty. It's basically saying, we're not at war with America. If we start messing with cannabis, we are breaking world treaty laws. And that means we're going to go back to World War. You can look throughout history, and every time America has said, okay, grow hemp, it means war. And so that's where it's because hemp is a commodity of war. And if a country grows more of a commodity that's useful in the process of any commerce, then they have power in all forms. And we know that war is the most profitable thing in the world. And so I worry, and I hope that this isn't true, but through studying international law and international cultural amicability for so long, I worry that medical rescheduling is a way to continue pirating our industry and have the largest fish eat the smaller fish until those large, lobbied, governed, oligarchy-owned monopolies or MSO operations, they are the ones that pay to continue to keep everyone else down. They are the ones that lobby for the laws. So I'm really going for deschedule. If they can't deschedule like alcohol, in 13 years, alcohol from completely prohibited from a whole bunch of women lobbying that it was making their men drunk and they were becoming bad parents. They weren't going to work. It was just destituting our country. And 13 years of lobbying at the speakeasies of New York, smoking weed with the jazz people, they were able to make alcohol legal. But we've been fighting for decades now, and they won't allow that to happen. And there is a reason. It's not just happening because a couple of, Republicans or Bible thumpers don't agree with the movement. This is because hemp and cannabis is so valuable and has so many different uses that it impedes on a ton of different commerces. And that it's not just medical. It's, everything, like I said, from oil, gas, all the way down to infrastructure, plastics. The only reason we have a plastic industry is because they needed somewhere for all the bio waste from petroleum products to go. So they shove more plastic, it's all like a corrupt cycle, not to tyrant or rage at all, but I worry that we're being handed to a standard that allows for the overgoverning and will wipe everybody out. And so that's where I worry. And that's where I fight, is where I feel that we do not need to be bastardized, and they don't have a right to. And they say in 50 years, it's going to be like Japan, where you walk in and you're not even going to know what a pot plant looks like, or like what a bud, like, what is that? Everybody's going to think it's just vape pens and extract. Nobody knows what a tobacco plant looks like. And that commerce has only been governed for 48 years. Like, identify a tobacco plant in a field, but you're smoking a cigarette. That distinction of information causes society to dumb down. And I think that's where we're de-evolving, and we really need to take control by paying a lot of attention to exactly what they're doing with this rescheduling and why. What does that really mean to us that want to have the freedom to work with plant commerce? Because there's a reason that we can't legally grow tobacco. They don't even want to sell popcorn seeds because they don't want that industry, ratified. So it's a scary time for me, and just logically.
No, I understand that fear. Do you think that a thriving craft industry is still possible in that future?
I absolutely do. Here, where I'm presently located to do this oversight in Humboldt, California, here in Humboldt and in Mendocino, we've lobbied very hard for farmers markets, direct sales, the ability to directly sell to consumers. So that brings a whole nother cultural ambiguity to have that traditional, like, what are we doing on Sunday, honey? Let's go to the farmer's market. And you can go get in touch with these organic regenerative farmers that are craft cannabis. They are the people putting the love into the plant every day, finding out about probiotic growing and learning more about how they can enrich the soil and their earth. And the people that are conscious enough to realize that inorganic stuff is toxic, will move towards that movement and help that proliferate, such as the craft beer, but nobody can walk now into this industry and be like, we're going to get rich. Yeah, green rush it. No, we believe in the way of life. We believe in homesteading. It's just enough to give you the freedom to continue waking up and smoking a joint in your own garden and feeling like you're free. And so there is a space. It's just not a space that you're going to get rich quick, and you're going to stare at all of those MSOs getting rich quick because they can lobby for the laws.
From a state of the market perspective, are you still hot on flower? Do you think if you're getting into the industry, should you be more focused on, like, from capitalistic standpoint, should you be more focused on edibles, vapes, stuff like that? Or, I'm just curious on your perspective.
I hate speaking this, actually, because I've asked this a lot as a consultant. We were actually discussing this last night at the 420 after party, is what point of commerce can you capitalize off of more? What do you feel is most beneficial capitalization aspect? And again, I feel like it's demographic. Each aspect, if you were to open a dispensary, retail, or farm in Missouri, that you're going to have a different demographic that's going to be interested, because they're at a different point in innovation and exposure than what is going to be a business that is opened in the lower Bronx, or one in Northern California, Southern California, Asia, Thailand, Morocco, or the South Caribbean. Those places have less exposure. So I may bring a vape pen to a country that's never seen a vape pen, and all of a sudden I just created an entire revolution because they didn't understand or see or know that. That's also true in these little communities throughout the United States. They haven't had the influence of that we've seen in places like California and Colorado and other, proliferated states, and such as Nevada. So speaking out of California, as somebody that's worked as an edibles judge, and also, with the Emerald Cup and many High Times Cannabis Cup, all those, I've have definitely seen a lot of raise in the edibles sector. And that is because with the beverage industry, and specifically, it can emulate social emulation of beer and alcohol. And so the vape pens come with the convenience of being able to smoke undetected, and so a lot of the younger generation, I think, is pandering towards that, while a lot of the older generation is now leaning towards the ability to learn how to dose yourself like alcohol. A lot of the conversation has gone around, well, how do you know how much is too much with alcohol? Me being a 115-pound woman, I could take a shot and it's going to affect you, David, much differently than a shot. You could probably go hard for 5 shots. I'm probably drunk at 2. And so that same, problem is in the edibles industry, of where people have to find the experience just enough to understand what is their limit. But we got so many different things going on with so many different beverages. It allows that catalyst into bars and open lounges, consumption lounges that emulate what people already are ingrained as knowing as social context of bars, our parties or things like that. Cannabis flower, of course, is the base of that. But due to I believe we have a lot of campaigning through DARE and stuff about, against tobacco smoking. And so I believe that stigma kind of carried on towards cannabis smoking. While there's a certain amount of society, that doesn't like the smell, or, the whole, the concept of a woman, especially a white woman in certain places, they're offended. They're like, you don't be smoking, gal. You're pretty, gal. You don't be smoking. I'm like, no, that's not how it works in Cali. We're all good. Like, we smoke weed all the time. But some people are against it. And so I think that there's a lot of innovative space to even, come correct with different elements. But when you're going into the marketing space of wanting to sell out or license to medical, I'm seeing, formulations like tinctures and inhalers also being a great alternative for the next high life. But it all needs flower. It just people aren't as interested in smoking a bud as they used to be.
What's your personal preference?
I like my organic goo. I have been growing this goo since 1999, and I am in love with it. Me and that plant have a love affair that is just stemming towards erotic. Just when you get to know a plant that you've grown yourself, there's like a chemical connection to it in some way. Yeah, I smell it and I'm just like, I'm so happy. I don't even have to smoke it. I can just pop the jar and be like, oh, happy. Those terpenes, help us embed good memories for sure. So I definitely love flower and a little bit of rosin. I don't actually use edibles in those types of things as much, or vaporizers, because I don't trust some companies to not be putting glycerin or other constituents into that, and too much sugar and stuff like that. Sugar is just another drug. It's just a legal drug. So I'll just get wired off of sugar and it's totally cool. So I try not to intake that drug as much either. So definitely a big goo girl. I love hard indicas. Definitely. Can't wait. I'm going to do my morning doobie now.
I didn't understand sugar as a drug until I had young children, and then I got it pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, that'll watch it. Just wind them up and let them go. It's interesting to see the difference. Here in Humboldt, there's a lot of parents that choose to raise their children without sugar in their lives, and even limiting fruit sugars. And the cognitive development of being able to focus is beautiful. It's very in touching. But it's more rational with this point of our society to have kids actually able to function on it, because that they're going to function on it later, because all the foods, all the process, it's already going to be a drug that's in them. So if we create tolerance to it, just like with caffeine, then maybe they won't just, some of the kids come out of the yurts in the woods to having never touched sugar, and they're just like, oh, you're just, whoa, calm down. You need recovery from sugar? Like, we don't need this rehab here. I know what you mean, though.
Finally, and thank you very much for being so generous with your time. I really do appreciate it, and getting, lending your expertise. I always like to ask about federal legalization. Do you have any thoughts on when it might happen and what the implications might be?
As I was speaking about before with medical rescheduling opposed to descheduling, I think that a lot of people don't understand that there's simple campaigns where people, this directly derives from our sugar conversation. This is, quite a, catalyst for that conversation as well, is there's a little thing called CAMP, CAMP. They're the black choppers that rate us. They're the people that keep us at bay. That's the Coalition Against Marijuana Planting. It's now been rebranded as EPIC, EPIK. So these are owned by Snapple, Nabisco, all of the largest companies you can think of pay CAMP to rate us because they want to be able, they pay for it. And we eat it. We get the munchies and we pay for our own rates. This is the absolute asinine aspect of this industry. We pay for our own rates by just getting the munchies. It's like this crazy cycle. So when I think of rescheduling again, I worry about people thinking medical is the term because they're like, oh, free the plant, no. It's great to have that hippie commerce to it, but it's the not reality. The reality is medical isn't something you can make in your house. You need to deschedule it like alcohol. And with alcohol being descheduled, they created a free commerce that now runs the world. Where can you not go? There's a couple of dry states and dry counties left and a couple of countries where it's not okay. But since they literally program people to believe that wine is the blood of Christ, we have to pay attention to the fact that that plant was bastardized and totally governed. And so if we can free it as much as they did, we have a chance. We need to deschedule, not reschedule. And that is the most important aspect that I believe that everybody can truly understand. Otherwise, I think that it's a commerce that's ran by narcissistic authoritarianism and people trying to overthrow each other with governance.
So best case scenario, it is descheduled. When could that happen?
I think that we're looking right now at a huge train of decisions with the next political party that'll be in governance. Even though I, in my own head, believe that voting is kind of like, religion in a way, where it's here to pacify the masses, not so much as actually change things. At times, I believe that all these decisions are made far before it hits the voting polls, but they let us believe we're voting, like we have impact to keep them calm, to believe that they're not being governed. So I think that this next legislation, if it goes back to Trump, that he is just enough of, and I'm not for either party. I'm completely neutral. I do not participate in large level conspirator style two-party politics. I believe that Republicans see the value of the commerce that is available. They know about, capitalizing independence rights, our right to bear arms even, and our right to have that cycle of I capitalize off of my own entrepreneurial movement. But at the same time, they don't believe in the medical rights of it. So, and with Democrats, they're the opposite of where they don't believe in the free commerce because they believe that it could deafen society or dumb us down, the same as the DARE campaign. So I think that this one is a real, temporal oddity on what it could be. But the powers that be and the money that's really there comes from the same place that colonialism did. And that's Europe. And so Munich being medically legalized, recreationally legalized, I think is a big flagship for whatever's happening. And I think we need to pay attention because that is where Bayer Pharmaceuticals lives. That's where the largest oil companies in the world lives. So when we know that's going on and then they want to follow us right on in with medical, we just really need to pay attention. What does that really mean? I guess we'll find out. But I think that in about 5 to 8 years, we're really going to know because there's going to be so much social pressure. If they don't have a way to govern social media and other things, I think that social pressure will eventually, have a cause and effect that are definitely, somebody's going to make enough money off of weed that they're going to pay the right people.
Well, AC, thank you again for taking the time. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or your work in the industry?
I think that I would love people to know that with equipment is a huge innovative space. And it's really, really important to look around you in your home even. It doesn't even just have to be about cannabis. Every day we interact with 1,000 things. Somebody invented this and made a lot of money off of it. They didn't know it was going to be used for cannabis when they did so. Everything is an innovative space. Just look around you, and innovation is, from the mother of necessity. So with cannabis and everything, don't just get blocked by only cannabis. Machinery and our innovative space of technology right now in all forms is very important. So don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. There is an opportunity to innovate yourself in cannabis and outside cannabis, whatever it is you're passionate about. And if you ever need help, I'm always here to help. And I hope you guys have a great day. Absolutely. Good to talk to you.
Is there a particular way to follow you? Do you prefer LinkedIn, IG? Where can people find you on social?
On IG, I'm AC Moon, A.C.Moon, all undercase. You can see me doing yoga in front of some giant cannabis plants. AC Moon Cameron on LinkedIn, or you can follow my website, indicainnovations.com, or Crop Tops Greenhouses, where I also offer super plug-in, shameless plug. If you ever need donations for nonprofits or schools or universities for research projects, I definitely help with donating my projects to those people in order to help their process along and help the younger generation innovate to the next level. So possibly we can have an impact on whatever comes after Generation Z. We'll find out.
Well, AC, thank you again, and I hope we have a chance to do it again soon.
Absolutely. It's great to meet you, David. Thank you so much for your time.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For AC Moon, founder of Indica Innovations International, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.